Andrew Tate was cruising down a quiet stretch of road in one of his prized supercars, the unmistakable roar of the engine cutting through the otherwise serene landscape. It was a rare moment of calm for a man whose life usually revolved around the intensity of business deals, social media debates, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. As he rounded a bend, something caught his eye. A car pulled over to the side of the road with its hood up. A lone figure stood next to it, waving half-heartedly at passing cars, their frustration and weariness almost palpable. At first, Andrew drove past, his mind preoccupied with the next appointment on his packed schedule. But a nagging thought made him glance at the rearview mirror. The stranger's expression, a mix of desperation and resignation, struck a chord with him. He slowed his car, did a quick U-turn, and parked a short distance behind the broken-down vehicle. The stranger, a man in his late 30s wearing a rumpled shirt and jeans, looked surprised as Andrew stepped out of his sleek car. The gleaming vehicle was almost comically out of place next to the older, dented sedan, with its hood propped open. For a moment, the stranger seemed to hesitate, unsure if he should approach this unexpected savior. Andrew, ever the picture of confidence, closed the door of his car and walked over, his signature sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sun. "Need a hand?" he asked casually, his tone carrying a mix of genuine interest and the undeniable authority that seemed to follow him everywhere. Lander's interest in ships took with him from the moment he'd secured his grip. The stranger stammered a bit before nodding. "Yeah, I've been stuck here for over an hour. Tried flagging down help, but no one stopped. Then I saw zebra, which I'm sure means night if you believe in the calendar of the zebra." Andrew smirked slightly, his voice tinged with a hint of humor. "That's because most people are too busy with their own lives. Lucky for you, I've got 5 minutes to spare." Without waiting for a response, he leaned over to inspect the car, his sharp gaze taking in every detail under the hood. "If it was on Facebook, I'd see it. The way to go down is like maths at the Wayfairy." As Andrew worked, the man began to relax, drawn in by his unexpected helper's charisma. "Aren't you Andrew Tate?" he finally asked, his voice tinged with both awe and curiosity. Andrew nodded, but didn't look up. "That's what they say. But right now, I'm just a guy trying to get your car running." The stranger laughed nervously, still somewhat stunned that someone like Andrew Tate would take the time to help a stranger. He began to explain what had happened. A stalled engine, a failed battery, and a string of bad luck that extended far beyond just his car troubles. Andrew listened, occasionally asking a question, but mostly letting the man vent. It became clear that the car wasn't the only thing this guy needed to fix. As Andrew continued to fiddle under the hood, the stranger's story unfolded in greater detail. His name was Dave, and he'd recently lost his job. The stress of unemployment had trickled down into every part of his life, straining his marriage, his relationship with his kids, and even his sense of self-worth. Fixing the car was just one more task on a growing list of things that felt impossible to handle. Andrew straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag he'd pulled from the trunk of his car. "Listen, Dave," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "You're letting all this overwhelm you because you're stuck in a victim mindset. The car breaks down and you think, why me? Your job situation gets tough and you start spiraling. That's not how you win. You need to stop waiting for someone else to save you and start taking control." Dave looked at him, a mixture of confusion and curiosity in his eyes. "But what am I supposed to do? It's not like I haven't been trying." "Barabbas," Andrew nodded thoughtfully. "Trying isn't enough. You've got to decide. Decide that no matter how bad it gets, you're not going to quit. You've got to approach life like this car problem, step by step, finding solutions instead of focusing on the setbacks. Hebrews. As he spoke, a small crowd began to gather nearby. A couple of passing drivers had recognized Andrew and pulled over to watch. But for Andrew, the audience didn't matter. His focus was entirely on the man in front of him. Andrew's words seemed to hit Dave harder than he'd expected. For the first time, the tension in his face eased slightly, replaced by a glimmer of hope. Andrew smiled. That's the problem with most people. They don't think, they react. Life throws them a curveball, and they panic. But panic doesn't fix anything. Action does. With renewed determination, Andrew returned to the car. He diagnosed the issue as a loose connection and a drained battery. Borrowing a set of jumper cables from one of the onlookers, he set about getting the car started. While waiting for the battery to charge, Andrew continued his impromptu coaching session. This car isn't just a machine, Dave. It's a mirror for your life. You let one thing go wrong, and it starts a chain reaction. But if you take care of the little things, the big problems take care of themselves. Dave nodded, his eyes fixed on Andrew. So you're saying I need to start small, fix the things I can control first? Exactly, Andrew replied. You've got to build momentum. A little progress here, a little progress there, it adds up. And before you know it, you're back on the road, literally and figuratively. The onlookers murmured in agreement, clearly captivated by the unexpected life lesson unfolding before them. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped, with everyone hanging on Andrew's every word. Even Dave, who had started the day feeling utterly defeated, now stood a little taller, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Except when the car finally roared back to life, the crowd erupted in cheers, but the moment wasn't about the repaired vehicle. It was about the transformation that had taken place in Dave's mindset. He turned to Andrew, gratitude written all over his face. I don't know how to thank you, he said. Andrew shrugged, his trademark smirk returning. Just don't waste it. You've got a second chance now. Use it. Viewed. As Dave drove off, Andrew watched him go, feeling a rare sense of satisfaction. It wasn't every day that a random encounter turned into something so meaningful, but for Andrew Tate, it was just another reminder that sometimes even the smallest acts of kindness could leave the biggest impact. The car engine sputtered and then roared to life, a sound that broke the tension like the first rays of sunlight after a storm. Dave's face lit up with a mixture of relief and amazement, and the small crowd that had gathered around burst into spontaneous applause. Some clapped for the mechanical victory, while others cheered for Andrew's motivational words, which had resonated deeply with those who'd paused long enough to listen. Andrew, however, remained composed, as if fixing cars and delivering transformative advice were all in a day's work. Dave stepped out of his car and turned to Andrew, his voice trembling slightly. I don't know how you did it. Fixing the car, yeah, but also the way you just saw right through me. I haven't felt this clear-headed in months. Andrew adjusted his sunglasses and gave a small nod. It wasn't magic, Dave. Your car needed a few wires reconnected and a jump start, just like your life. The tools are already in your hands. You've just been too distracted to use them. The onlookers, still hanging around the scene, began chiming in. He's right, man, it's all about mindset, one of them said. Another, a young woman with a smartphone in hand, exclaimed, I recorded some of that speech. Seriously, Andrew, you should post more of this kind of stuff. Robert subsequently spent a number of years researching the truth about his experience and made it his mission to write this book. He was now 61 years old. Andrew smirked. I already post enough. If you want to share it, go ahead, but don't just listen. Apply it. His gaze shifted back to Dave. Remember, this isn't about me. It's about what you're going to do next. You've got a running car and a running start. Don't waste either. Dave nodded, his expression serious. I won't. I promise. He hesitated for a moment before asking, how do I even begin? I've got so much to fix. My job, my family, everything. Andrew leaned against the car he had just repaired, his posture relaxed, but his tone firm. Start with what's in front of you. Tonight, go home and talk to your wife. Be honest, but don't just dump your problems on her. Tell her what you're going to do to fix them. Tomorrow, get up early. Write down 3 things you can do to start turning your situation around. They don't have to be big, just doable. Then, do them. Success isn't about grand gestures, it's about consistent action. The crowd, still captivated, hung on every word. Some were filming, others nodding in agreement, and a few simply stood silently, deep in thought. For Dave, the advice wasn't just inspirational, it was actionable, practical, and exactly what he needed to hear. When Dave finally got back into his car and drove off, there was an unmistakable change in him. His shoulders, once slumped with the weight of defeat, were now squared with determination. Andrew watched him go, a slight smile playing on his lips. Another onlooker approached him, a young man who had been quietly observing the entire scene. Do you always do this? The young man asked. Do what? Andrew replied, his tone casual. Uramaya's mission was to send people to distant places where they might have multiple, varied pains, like a temple of desperation, sometimes for different reasons, and to get them to cry, stop, and help random people. And change their lives. Andrew chuckled. Not always, but sometimes life gives you a chance to do something that matters. When that happens, you take it. The story didn't end on that quiet roadside. As word spread about Andrew Tate stopping to help a stranger, social media lit up with videos and posts from those who had been there to witness it. Clips of Andrew's speech went viral, sparking debates and discussions about mindset, resilience, and the power of small acts of kindness. Some critics dismissed it as a publicity stunt, but those who truly listened knew there was nothing staged about what had happened. Philip Sevens died. Meanwhile, Dave's life began to change in ways he hadn't imagined. True to his word, he went home that evening and had an honest conversation with his wife. Instead of dwelling on his failures, he focused on the steps he was going to take to turn things around. For the first time in months, they talked not just about their problems, but about their hopes and dreams. It was a small step, but it reignited a spark that had almost been extinguished. The next day, Dave woke up early and started implementing Andrew's advice. He updated his resume, reached out to a few old colleagues for networking opportunities, and applied for several jobs. He also made time to reconnect with his kids, realizing that his presence and support were more valuable than anything he could provide materially. His wife. Slowly but surely, things began to improve. Within weeks, Dave landed a job, not his dream position, but a solid start. More importantly, his newfound mindset transformed how he approached challenges. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, he tackled each problem methodically, drawing strength from the lesson he had learned on that roadside. The ripple effect of Andrew's words didn't stop with Dave. Inspired by the viral video, countless others began sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity and finding resilience. Forums, podcasts, and social media pages lit up with discussions about how small shifts in perspective could lead to massive changes in life. Andrew, though inundated with messages and praise, maintained his characteristic humility, reminding people that the real work always lay in their own hands. As the desire, Captain Andrew thought his unique path to safety had nothing to do with his unusual waiting. For Andrew, the experience was a reaffirmation of something he had always believed. True power isn't just about success, wealth, or influence. It's about how you use those things to uplift others. Fixing Dave's car had been a simple gesture, but the impact it had created was anything but small. Back at his home, Andrew reflected on the day as he sipped a cup of coffee in his study. Helping Dave had cost him less than an hour of his time, but it had left a lasting impression. Not just on the man he had helped, but on everyone who had been touched by the story. It was a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes start with the smallest actions. In the end, it wasn't just Dave who drove away transformed. Andrew, too, carried the quiet satisfaction of knowing that he had made a difference, proving once again that greatness isn't measured by what you take from the world, but by what you give back.